What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. Welcome to my channel, and there are just 4 teams left to compete for a national championship. In this video, we got your bracket update here for you. We will review all the quarterfinal games, give you some slight previews for the college football playoff semifinals, as well as talk about some of the conversations surrounding the college football playoff right now, such as the whole SEC conversation, the format, do the buys really matter, and a whole bunch of other things that we will talk about in this video and probably in a separate video out later on this week as well. Same thing with the 2 semifinal games. They will have their own videos out later on this week, here within the next coming days, actually. But before we dive on into this, I just have to say my thoughts and feelings and condolences go out to everyone affected by what has happened in New Orleans, to the friends and family and the community of New Orleans, and to all the people affected. A city and a community, especially the likes on Bourbon Street, that love to celebrate, love to have fun, now have to take a step back from that, and they have to mourn, and they have to be sad, which is something that you just never want to see with anyone ever, especially in a community as friendly as that, and a community that just loves to have a good time. A senseless, heartbreaking, and just gutless, senseless, heartless, any other adjective you can use to describe it along that nature probably works. And so my thoughts and feelings go out to everyone affected by that situation. And as I always like to say, there's no easy way to segue from that, but I'm going to try, and I just want to thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you share your thoughts and feelings with the community in New Orleans as well, but thank you for watching this video because it does help to support me in a lot more ways than you can even imagine. If the only thing you do is sit back, relax, and watch this video, you're still helping to support the channel in a huge way. But the biggest way you can help support the channel is hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. We had a lot of you do that in 2024. I want to see even more of you do it here in 2025, and support the channel any way you can by interacting with it in any way you can. Liking, commenting, sharing, it all helps support what I do here on YouTube. But if you want to follow me outside of this platform, go give me a follow on Twitter or X. It's at TailgateNate29. Or if you want to follow me in a more professional setting, go give me a follow on LinkedIn. It kind of just so that you guys can see what else I do in the sports media realm, such as call games, write articles, and you'll still get updates about YouTube and anything else. So with all that said and done and out of the way, let's start by talking about these quarterfinal games. We are going to go in the order in which the games were aired on television. So of course, we're going to start with the lone New Year's Eve contest. That is Boise State, and that is Penn State. So overall implications here from this game, or I should just say not necessarily implications. Obviously, the implications are Boise State's season is done and Penn State is moving on in the college football playoff. But I guess just the overall sort of how this game played out, it kind of played out how a lot of people thought it was going to, but for the second straight game in the college football playoff, the Penn State defense is able to take advantage of turnovers. They forced 3 against SMU and got them to look very shaky, very uncharacteristic, having SMU do things that they don't usually do. Same thing happened with this Boise State team. They were able to limit Ashton Jeanty. I can't believe I am saying that. They were able to limit Ashton Jeanty. Jeanty on the game only had 30 carries for 104 yards, no touchdowns, and only 3.5 yards per carry. Now, there were so many just different ways that they tried to get Jeanty the ball, so many different schemes and so many different styles of run, and Penn State was able to defend all of them. And what they were also able to do, which was uncharacteristic of Jeanty, this is where the uncharacteristic part comes in, is they were able to force him to put the ball on the turf. He only had 2 fumbles the entire season, and he had 2 in the first half of this game, and Penn State was able to force 4 total turnovers en route to a 31-14 win. They were the more physical team, and they looked like the more talented team. It just felt like Boise State was outmatched here, but there were points in this game where you kind of had the feeling like, okay, if Boise State can string a couple things together here, this game gets interesting. You felt like that in the first quarter, but you especially felt like that when they pulled out their little trick play and made the game 17-14. What had happened was Maddox Madsen Madsen. Sort of some weird stuff going on there in the backfield, but Matt Lauder ended up being wide open, and Madsen was able to find him. Lauder takes it to the end zone, and all of a sudden you thought, uh-oh, this could definitely start to turn the tide in Boise State's favor. Well, Penn State goes 11 plays, 75 yards the very next drive, and then Boise State, 13 plays later, 7.5 minutes later, can't come up with points. They throw a pick. You throw 2 missed field goals into the ring here as well, and it just did not go Boise State's way in this game. You turn the ball over 4 times in a game, doesn't really matter who you play, you're probably not going to win the game. You turn the ball over 4 times against the team as good of quality as Penn State, you are also probably not going to win that game. In fact, you're most definitely not going to win that game. Now, the only question that some people might have about Penn State is, okay, what does this offense do moving forward? What does this offense do when it needs to be able to throw the ball? Because we haven't really seen Drew Aller or I should say really need to take a whole lot of shots. We've seen him take shots. We've seen him throw the ball downfield. He hit one to Omari Evans, a downfield shot there in that game, and then 2 touchdowns to Tyler Warren. Really didn't utilize him all from a statistical standpoint against at SMU. He was able to lead Penn State with 6 catches, 63 yards, and a pair of scores in the Fiesta Bowl against Boise State. But Drew Aller hasn't really had to do much of anything, and this run game has been very, very effective. They lit it up against SMU, and they did very well against Boise State here too. 17 carries, 134 yards for Katron Allen, and for Singleton, 12 carries, 87 yards, and 1 touchdown, both of them north of 7 yards per carry. This is the Penn State team that's playing as good a football as anyone in the playoffs right now, and it's why they are one of the Final Four teams here. Now, I know people could say they had the most favorable road to get to this position, and now they got to run through a Notre Dame team that we'll talk about a little bit later. But Penn State, man, this is a really, really good team. Hats off to them and what they have done. That defense has been one of the stories to me of the college football playoff so far. Let's move on in to games that took place on New Year's Day. Texas and Arizona State. And for the second straight week, Texas lets their opponent back in. They let Clemson back into that game. There was an opportunity there for Clemson. It was 31-24 in the late stages, and then Jadon Blue ripped off that run for Texas in the first round. What was different about the quarterfinal game is there was no counterpunch from Texas. They got that thing up 24-8. Arizona State's offensive line could do nothing. They were able to limit Cam Scadaboo when it mattered. Quinn Ewers was hitting his shots. The defense was taking over the line of scrimmage. It just seemed like, they scored that touchdown with around 10 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter, and everyone in that building thought, yeah, okay, this game is pretty much over. Arizona State was trying to counterpunch, but they could do nothing on 4th and short. They could do nothing once they got inside of the red zone. Even when they got that safety field goal, they cut that thing back to single digits for the first time since it was 7-3. It just didn't really feel like Arizona State ever was going to make that comeback, especially once Texas got that touchdown, that 5-yard Quinn Ewers run. Well, then this happened. Then you get the trick play, right? Arizona State gets down the field. They're 10 plays, 75 yards. This is the 10th play of the drive. It's 4th and 2 at the Texas 42. Arizona State does not have a kicker worth of anything. The field goal target line the entire game on TV, you could see it sitting at the 29-yard line, which is, for all intents and purposes, a 45, 46-yard field goal. You barely have anyone on that roster that can kick that far, so that's the target line at the bare minimum of what you need to get to even have a chance to make it. And so, obviously, at the 42-yard line, too short to punt. There's 6 minutes left. You're down by 9. You need a score. You go for it here, or I'd say you're down by 2 scores now at 24-8, and they pitch it to Cam Scadaboo, who's running towards the right side. Everybody and their mother in that stadium thought it was a run. Well, then you had Malik McLean down the field. Scadaboo lobs that thing up there. I think it was designed that way. I've seen a couple people say it wasn't. I mean, if you think it wasn't, I don't think you know what you're talking about. I think that was clear and obviously a design play that Kenny Dillingham pulled out of his back pocket for that specific situation. And it wasn't necessarily the best ball from Cam Scadaboo, but it found its target in Malik McClain, Xavier Gilroy, that got the 2-point conversion. And then Texas just tries to take a downfield shot to end it. On 2nd and 4, Quinn Ewers, I forget who was the intended receiver down there, but the pass hung up a little bit too long, and it allowed Javon Robinson to come over and pick that football off. Arizona State, first play of that drive, Sam Levitt takes a shot of his own to Cam Scadaboo. He's able to catch it, get a couple of penalties. There was a defensive pass interference, which Cam Scadaboo slowed up to initiate the contact. In my opinion, that should be offensive pass interference, but it's not the way the rule is written. But he got his face mask ripped off, or he got his helmet ripped off at the end of the play, got the face mask grabbed, so it didn't really matter anyway. And then Cam Scadaboo, a couple plays later, able to punch it into the end zone. So Arizona State, all of a sudden, then they get that 2-point conversion. Cam Scadaboo, same thing, gets into the end zone. All of a sudden, you look at the scoreboard like, wow, this game is tied. Arizona State did that within 5 minutes. 16 points in 5 minutes to tie the Texas Longhorns, a team that everyone thought was going to run the Sun Devils out of the building. That is very, very impressive stuff, and Texas had their chance. They had 2 missed field goals, and let's talk about this really, really quickly. There have been other people that have dove a lot more in depth to this. Was it targeting? Yes. Yeah. It definitely was targeting by the letter of the law. That is targeting. I know the ball was tipped at the line, so maybe you can argue not totally a defenseless player, but I mean, come on. He's looking for the ball. He's trying to pull it up. The defender lunged, got in the air, made contact to the head or neck area on a defenseless player. To me, that is textbook targeting. Textbook targeting. I am shocked that that thing did not get called. Now, did it really matter? I mean, you could argue if that targeting thing gets called, Arizona State goes down the field and is able to get a game-winning field goal or maybe a game-winning touchdown. Obviously, we're never going to know, but karma kind of paid its way for the people that thought it was targeting and that Texas was able to miss the field goal on the very next drive. So, I mean, an eye for an eye, I suppose. But Arizona State had their shot to win this thing in overtime. They score in their first possession. They get Texas to 4th and 13, and Texas scores. And I think, me personally, from that moment right on there, when that 4th and 13 pass was able to find, I think it was Matthew Golden, I knew Texas had that one. First play of the second overtime period. Quinn Ewers is able to find his tight end in Gunnar Helm. Matthew Golden gets the 2-point, and Andrew Makuba seals it with an interception on 3rd down. Hell of a game from the Arizona State Sun Devils. They controlled the clock. They ran the football well. They did everything they need to do, probably besides having their offensive line play a little bit better to win this game. But Texas, man, I mean, moving forward here, this is a team that's got all the talent in the world and is yet to put it together on a consistent basis. They have had lull after lull after lull in every single game that they have played this season, and they cannot have that when they face a team in Ohio State that absolutely dominated Oregon in Pasadena. More on that here in just about 30 seconds. But Quinn Ewers having that deep ball hang up just a tad too long for Arizona State to come over and pick it, you know Ohio State's going to take advantage of that. The things that Ohio State did in the Rose Bowl that we are about to talk about, if they do that against Texas, I could see the Buckeyes blowing the Longhorns out. This is a team that has to play a full 60 minutes of football because they potentially have 120 minutes of football still ahead of them. Let's talk about what Ohio State did to Oregon in Pasadena, because this was about as vengeful as it gets. This was a Buckeye beatdown. You look up at the scoreboard and it's 34-0 before you can even blink an eye. And I think everybody out there, Buckeye fans, Duck fans, college football fans in general, felt like they were getting punked, felt like they were on a prank TV show and someone was going to go flip the channel and say, haha, you got. Here's what's actually happening in Pasadena. And what you were watching was actually happening. It was Ohio State taking every single advantage possible. And I mean, Jim Knowles and Chip Kelly, that's the defensive and offensive coordinators for Ohio State, were in their bag. They made Oregon look on the other side of the line of scrimmage, both offensively and defensively, and say, what in the actual hell am I looking at? Especially when you talk about Dillon Gabriel. We'll talk about the offense here later because we got to talk about one player. He wears number 4 in red, but Oregon and Dillon Gabriel. The guy has started more games at the quarterback position than anyone throughout college football history. He holds that record. He is tied in this game. He tied the most touchdowns, I think the most touchdowns responsible for, or most passing touchdowns, or something of that nature in college football history. Well, you take a look at that game, and he looked at the opposing secondary, and he couldn't read anything. He had no idea what this Buckeye team was doing, and the one thing, or actually the two things, that Ohio State was not able to do against this Oregon team in their first meeting in Eugene was, one, limit the big play, and two, get pressure to Dillon Gabriel. They were able to do both. Every single one of Oregon's drives where they went down and scored were 10 plays. They did not allow the big play at all. Sure, there were a couple good chunk yardage plays here and there, but they were very few and far between, and they did not get a single sack on Dillon Gabriel in that first meeting, and they more than made up for it here in Pasadena. That Buckeye defense had eight sacks. Eight. That's how much Oregon allowed, I believe, the entire season was eight. They allowed, or actually, it might even have been five. I think it was pretty close to eight. I'm not sure of the exact number. I know the offensive line last year only allowed 5 sacks. Oregon allowed 5 sacks the first 2 weeks, and ever since that point, their offensive line had been shut down. And honestly, this was a Buckeye pass rush that didn't even really get there super quickly for the most part. It was more of just being able to allow the secondary to say, okay, nobody's open, and then Dillon Gabriel having to scramble around in the pocket trying to extend plays, which also, ironically enough, was really the only way Oregon was able to create offense for the most part in that game, because Ohio State made the pocket feel uncomfortable, and that's how they were able to get 8 sacks on Dillon Gabriel. Now let's talk about it from an offensive standpoint, because they also made this Oregon defense just go, okay, what the hell is happening? The game plan, as jokingly said by Scott Van Pelt, throw it to 4. And that's exactly what they did. So Ohio State opened up with the little outside flip to G. Scott. He was able to take it across. You get Jeremiah Smith in open space, just a little bubble screen route, and he takes it the distance himself. He dared people in press conferences to play man, to dare Oregon to play man, because they were going to take a shot to him. He thinks no one can cover him, and he's not proven wrong. He is proven exactly right. Oregon couldn't cover him. That play, it was already 17-0, and then Will Howard takes a shot downfield. And once the camera pans over to that side, you just see a wide open Jeremiah Smith, and you think, how does Oregon lose the best player on the field? How do you lose sight of this guy? They run him in the slot. Very nice route by Jeremiah Smith. He gets one-on-one with the safety, turns his head, and boom, he's gone. That is about as easy as it gets. Travion Henderson ripped off a big run. Emeka Egbuka with a dime from Will Howard, and I could dive so much more in depth, but we're going to move on and talk about the other game here. This was a Buckeye beatdown, and I'll just go ahead and tell you right now, whether you are a Buckeye fan or not, you have to notice that if this team plays like they did against Tennessee and against Oregon for 120 more minutes, they're going to walk out of here with a national championship trophy, and we're about to have a lot different of a conversation surrounding Ryan Day and this Ohio State program as a whole. They have to play Texas next, and Texas is going to pose their unique challenges, but if Texas has another one of those lulls, Ohio State could definitely run the Longhorns out of a building in their own state, which, again, is something we'll talk about when that preview video comes out. And again, previewing the semifinal just a little bit here. I mean, the line of scrimmage battle is going to be as important as ever. That's where Texas has excelled, and the defense also forces a ton of turnovers. They're going to do things to put Will Howard in this Ohio State offense in some precarious situations. That's going to be a couple big keys there in that game. But if the Buckeyes are firing on all cylinders like they are, I don't see anyone in this Final Four field that can beat them. But again, we'll talk about that more later. Let's move on, talk about Notre Dame and Georgia. So this one started out how a lot of people thought it was going to, and again, this one had gotten postponed because of everything that was happening in New Orleans. Again, thoughts, condolences, and everything out to that community and everyone affected. Football becomes second to anything that happens over there. But again, no easy way to segue. We're going to try. This was a defensive battle, really, for the most part, from start to finish. And we'll talk about where Notre Dame won this game because they won it in just about 35 seconds. And for those of you that didn't watch, I'll tell you how they did that. I mean, really, Notre Dame won this game in 35 seconds, 40 seconds, however long it was. They won it in a very, very short period of football between the end of the first half and the beginning of the second half. We'll talk about that here in just a little bit, but Georgia made the first mistake early. They go 13 plays, 71 yards down the field. Trevor Etienne fumbles the ball inside the red zone, and that's costly. Red zone turnovers are never good, but when you know you're going to be in a defensive battle against a really, really good team and a team that has a really good quarterback on the other side of the line there as well in the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, well, turnovers are costly, and Trevor Etienne was able to make it. Now, Gunnar Stockton looked really, really good early. He did not look so good as of late, and that's because Notre Dame was able to create some pressure. So Georgia gets Georgia gets a field goal to open the scoring. Very next drive, Notre Dame goes down the field, and field goal kicking had been a struggle for them this year. Mitch Jeter was on against Indiana, and he was on here today, or I should say yesterday, against Georgia. So the teams exchange punts, and then this is where things really, really start to go downhill for Georgia and all but uphill for Notre Dame. 10 plays, 32 yards, 2.5 minutes. Notre Dame, they were able to go down the field, kick a field goal before they end the first half, right? So they were going to get the ball to start the second half. They already had a 6-3 lead, and then Kirby Smart in Georgia decides to be aggressive, which honestly, I don't mind. I don't mind the call to sit back and air this thing out and try to put yourself in field goal range to tie this thing up here, but Georgia just... that pressure, man, especially from the left side. From the left side, they really challenged that left tackle position. Notre Dame did all game long, and it's what got Gunnar Stockton there. It's what got Gunnar Stockton on that play. They knock it away from him. It's on the ground. Notre Dame picks it up, and all of a sudden, Notre Dame, at the very least, can get 3 more points before going on into the halftime locker room. They decide to turn that 3 into 7. Riley Leonard finds Bo Collins, and all of a sudden, you look up at the scoreboard, it was 3-3, 11 seconds of game time ago, and you look up and it's 13-3, and then Georgia just decides to take it into the half. A smart decision because you don't want a replay of what just happened there with the ball getting knocked out of Gunnar Stockton's hands. So, okay, then Notre Dame comes out. You're already up 13-3, and a lot of people are thinking, well, if Notre Dame can go down the field and get a touchdown here, they probably put the game maybe not out of reach because we've seen Georgia come back against Alabama this year. Granted, that was with Carson Beck at the helm, but we've still seen Georgia fight. We've still seen Georgia come back from things like that this year. Notre Dame says, I'll do you one better. I'm not even going to put a drive together. I'll just go down the field and score. Jaden Harrison, 98 yards. And there was really only one man that had a shot at it, and I think it was Cash Jones that was really the only guy that had a shot to bring him down, and it was just a futile effort. Jaden Harrison, the Marshall transfer, weaving through traffic, hits the sideline, and he's gone. And in that span of 20-some seconds, of 30-some seconds, of however the hell long of period of time that was between the end of the first half and the beginning of the second half, Notre Dame won the game right there. Georgia was able to add a touchdown off a pretty big play. Notre Dame was able to add a field goal, but it was the Fighting Irish defense that shined. Georgia just was not able to run the football at all. 62 yards on 29 carries for 2.1 yards per carry. Notre Dame ran all over Georgia. They didn't really even have to do it with a ton of yards. 244 yards because they forced turnovers, and then that kickoff return helped Notre Dame out a ton. That kickoff return doesn't happen. You're sitting here, had a 16-10 game, and who knows, Georgia may very well have had a shot to win that thing late at that point, but man, that just masterful by Notre Dame. Some great play calling, some great coaching towards the end of that half there as well. And Notre Dame beats Georgia and moves on. So, okay, what does this mean now? Well, you take a look at it and you notice a very common theme here. Not one team that had a first-round bye is on to the semifinals of the college football playoff, which is leading a lot of people to question, in some cases, idiotically question or then therefore hate this college football playoff format. Now, if you're a team that lost, I can understand you not liking this format. Oregon, for example, you get that bye, and because of the nature of the format where Boise State and Arizona State are conference champs, top four conference champs get first round bye. So because of the nature of the format, your prize is a first round bye and a date with Ohio State in what should have been a more than comfortable environment in Pasadena, not that far from Eugene. You just got to drive however many hours south. They're from Eugene. It's actually quite a bit because Pasadena, I think, in southern California, but still, regardless, it's as home field as you were going to get with the sites that are in the New Year's Six, and your date was with a team that right now looks like they can go win a national championship. Arizona State, Boise State, I mean, give credit, they fought at points. Georgia, a lot of people said that they were deserving of that number 2 spot there as well, but a lot of people have then seemed to question, does the first round bye matter? I mean, look, Ohio State was a favorite. Notre Dame, the line shifted towards the end there to where they were favored in that game. Penn State was the favorite, and Texas was favored over Arizona State from a betting standpoint. And I predicted all of this to happen. So am I surprised? No, because I thought Ohio State would win. I thought Notre Dame would win. I thought Penn State and Texas all would win. So I mean, not to kind of pat myself on the back here, but I am 8 for 8 in college football playoff picks. But when you sit here and talk about the format, I think I've already addressed this before, but the format needs to be changed in which you just rank teams, right? And I use the example from college basketball, and it's the example I will continue to use when people ask me this question. What will you do to change the college football playoff format? You seed it like college basketball. If Grambling State wins the SWAC, they don't get a top 31 seed just because they were one of the 31 conference champions. Like, that doesn't make any sense, right? Grambling State is not going to be as good as any of the at-large teams that come out of the SEC, Big Ten, ACC, whatever have you. They should be a 16 seed, a 15 seed, however good relative to some of these one bid conference leagues that they are, right? The Mountain West, for all intents and purposes, for all we know in the future, there's probably going to be a one bid league. If the Big 12 continues to beat itself up, it could very well continue to be a one bid league. The ACC this year was a 2-bid league, but also very easily could have been a 1-bid league if SMU was able to beat Clemson in the ACC championship game. And then you got Notre Dame sitting there as well, who was playing like one of the best 4 teams in college football. With the current format, it's impossible for them to get a first round bye, which I would tell you, I feel like they deserved this year. This format is definitely going to be changed. It is the first year. I think people are getting a little bit too angry about the sort of things that happen, but I do think people recognize, hey, it's year 1 of this format. Let's play it out how it has, and then let's change what needs to be changed. Year 1 is never going to be perfect. There are going to be tweaks, and there are going to be twists, and there are going to be things done to make this thing better. A 12-team playoff is already good. You get more teams a shot at a national championship, and I don't know anybody out there that's going to complain about more college football. Now, we haven't really necessarily gotten the quality of games that I think people were hoping for, which I can also stand, I say I can also understand as to why people are upset about this new 12-team field. And you take a look at these games here. I mean, the way Ohio State's playing, they might blow out Texas. There is a world in which that game is not relatively close, and there's a game in which Penn State Notre Dame is not relatively close, and that one could honestly go either way for me. I think that's going to be a phenomenal game, but you just take a look at this field here. There are no conference champions left. There are 2 conference runner-ups. There's the Big Ten third place team, and there's a team that doesn't even belong in a conference, or so that doesn't associate themselves with a conference in the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. But I would argue here that from a talent perspective, Ohio State, Texas, Notre Dame, Penn State, they're 4 of probably the 6 most talented teams in college football, and you can throw Oregon and Georgia into that mix right there. So This format is going to get tweaked. Things are going to get changed. This is not the way that things are going to be forever, because the College Football Playoff Committee has come out and said that they are focusing on getting the seeding right. And I think once that happens, you'll see some games like maybe Ohio State, Oregon happen in the College Football Playoff semifinal, or maybe even a national championship. But this is a format that's going to get tweaked. There are going to be things done to it to get changed. And the one last thing I want to talk about here for maybe 30 seconds is the whole SEC supremacy thing. It just means more. A lot of people are dogging on the SEC right now because Alabama lost to Michigan, South Carolina lost to Illinois, Georgia lost to Notre Dame, Tennessee got blown out by Ohio State, and I see all the jokes so that your only hope left is the fact that Texas is a newcomer to the SEC. They were in the Big 12 last year. And okay, look, the SEC is a very, very deep conference. The narrative that the SEC is the best conference and a lot of people giving them the benefit of the doubt needs to die. And any one of the SEC faithful out there that are using the hypotheticals, I mean, first of all, the easiest position to argue from is a hypothetical because there is no proving you wrong, because you're right. We don't know that. We don't know that Alabama wouldn't have put up a better fight because they're not in it. We don't know if South Carolina would have put up a better fight because they're not in it. You might be right that Ole Miss would be a team that sits here in the Final Four, but we'll never know because they weren't one of the 12 teams that got selected for this honor, for this position. The hypothetical scenarios need to die, and the SEC is the best conference in college football needs to die. I don't know if you noticed, but the Big Ten has got 2 of the 4 best teams in it, and it was going to work out that way with the results of either of these games, and even if Ohio State and Oregon were to be switched, they were still going to get 2 of the 4 teams in the college football playoff semifinals. This the narrative surrounding the fact, and look, are all conferences made equal? No, but you get into some very messy slopes when you start talking about is this conference better than the other, because bowl season to some people tells how good conferences are, but it also depends on the matchups because you also have opt-outs and you have guys transfer, and bowl season doesn't really, to me, say this conference is better than the other. I really kind of don't participate in that sort of conversation. Now, I have said for quite some time that the SEC has been the best conference in college football. I'm going to stop that because I think it needs to die. And it's not just because of the performances that we've seen out of the SEC here. I mean, Tennessee is going to go play probably, or Tennessee had to go on the road in the cold environment and play what probably, to a lot of people, are the national champions right now. Georgia didn't have their starting quarterback, and Texas has been in lulls all season, yet still found a way to make it into the Final Four. Say what you want. You can make any argument that you wish, but I think that that's going to wrap it up for this video. Thank you so much if you watch the entire thing. Listen to me ramble on and whatnot. Short little preview about Notre Dame and Penn State. Battle at the line of scrimmage, and physicality level defensively, as well as forcing your opponent to turn the football over. Notre Dame forced a couple Georgia turnovers, and Penn State has forced turnovers all postseason long. Those are going to be some huge keys in that game, but we'll break down Ohio State, Texas, Notre Dame, Penn State in videos later on down the line here on the channel, and we'll probably dive on into a lot deeper conversation surrounding how I would fix the playoff format, some things that I would do throughout college football, and maybe a couple other conversations as well. As always, you guys got any video suggestions, let me know down in the comment section below. Hey, remember to play hard but tailgate harder. See all you guys in the next video. We'll do playoff previews for the semifinal games here later on in the coming days. Goodbye.